Today, I have for you 5 players that you should potentially sell high on in your Dynasty leagues. Before we get started, real quick, make sure to join our Discord. Link is in the description of the video. It's free to join. You'll get notified whenever we go live. So if you want to join us for live rookie drafts, live startup mock drafts, that's the place to be. And also, we're putting together listener leagues. We already have 2 listener leagues set up. We're going to be doing this is real money, real drafts. We're going to be live streaming the drafts for those this month. So be on the lookout for that. But I'd like to get some more started up. So if you want to get into it, be part of our 3rd listener league, then make sure to join the Discord. That's the easiest way to do it. So again, we're talking about some sell highs. I put out a buy low video a couple of days ago. Make sure to check that out. Today, it's all about the sell highs. And we're starting off with the quarterback position. I have 5 players. I have 1 quarterback, and it's Justin Herbert. Now, I am a Chargers fan, right? So I like Justin Herbert. I think he's a great quarterback. I think he's one of the better, quarterbacks in the NFL. But I still think he's kind of at that range where to me, he's a sell high. He's all the way up at QB7. And when I look at sell highs, all I'm really looking at is guys that are near the top of their tier, essentially. Guys that I feel like are near the top of their tier. I want to down tier to someone else and get more assets in return, right? I look at the list here. You see the numbers for Herbert. He's essentially been you average that out. He's been QB 13 on average the last 3 years. QB 15, 11, and 14. So he's been QB 13 the last 3 years. He's been good. He's been giving you 17 plus points in 4-point per passing touchdown leagues. But you just kind of look at all these players that I'm going to name. Would you be shocked if they were better than Herbert for the next 2 to 3 seasons? We combine the next 2-3 seasons. Would you be shocked if they were better than Herbert? CJ Stroud, Drake May, Caleb Williams, Bo Nix, Jordan Love, Brock Purdy, Kyler Murray, Baker Mayfield, Jared Goff, Dak Prescott. I don't even know how many I listed there. I just listed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 or 10 guys right there that I wouldn't be surprised if they were better than Herbert combined over the next 2-3 years. I wouldn't be surprised if Herbert was better than them either, but it wouldn't shock me. It's almost like a coin flip. Then you throw in some other guys like, a J.J. McCarthy, a Trevor Lawrence, hopefully with a new offense, a Michael Penix, some of the rookies, a Bryce Young, a Tua. These are some other guys where maybe I'd be a little bit surprised, but I wouldn't be absolutely shocked, right? So my point is to down tier from Justin Herbert. Down tiering from Justin Herbert it feels like a good idea right now because he's literally at the top of that tier. You have your elite guys, Josh Allen, Jaden Daniels, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts. Those guys are the elite guys. They either run the ball or they're Joe Burrow and they're going to pass for 40 touchdowns, seemingly every year. And then you get into a bunch of other guys where there's not a whole lot of difference between them. Patrick Mahomes, Herbert, and then all those guys that I just listed. Guys that aren't going to necessarily run a whole lot unless you're, Drake May or Kyler Murray are guys that could run. But most of these guys aren't going to do much with their legs. They'll give you a decent floor, some of them, like a Herbert, like a Mahomes, but they're not difference-making with their legs. And so for that reason, it's kind of like, all right, these are all good quarterbacks. I want to have them on my team if I can, but also I kind of want to take advantage of when they're at the top of the tier to tear down and grab another really good piece, either a starter or a pick that I can use in future trades. So it's like, would you rather Justin Herbert or would you rather, Jordan Love and a first-round pick or a legitimate starter for your team? You're probably going to lean the Jordan Love side. At least I would. So again, this is nothing against Herbert. I think he's going to be good for the next 2-3 years, but I don't necessarily think he's going to be that difference maker type of player. Moving on to the running backs. This one was tough for me because David Montgomery, I've been a fan since I watched him in college at Iowa State. I traded for him late in redraft season, late in the season in redraft, both in 2020 and 2021, and he helped win me fantasy championships, in my home league. So I'm a big David Montgomery fan. And I'm fully acknowledging, I could just be completely wrong about what I'm about to say about David Montgomery, but I want to throw it out there to get, the possibility of this happening. Now, you see David Montgomery, since he's been with the Lions, he's been awesome. He's been an RB1 since he's been on the Lions, 14.2 points and 14.6 points. The dude's basically a lock whenever he plays to get a touchdown. Like, I don't know. There's probably, you could probably count on one hand how many games where he, played the entire game where he didn't leave with an injury since he's been on the Lions where he didn't score a touchdown. Like, that's how good he's been. He scored 25 rushing touchdowns over the last 2 years. And then probably a couple of receiving. Actually, no receiving touchdowns with the Lions, but 25 total touchdowns in 28 games, right, with the Lions. So there's probably I'd be surprised if there was much more than a handful of games where he didn't score a touchdown. That being said, he's getting a little bit older. He's 28 years old, but I'm not super worried about that. It's more of, is this the year where we see Jahmyr Gibbs take over just a little bit more? Because it feels like this would be the year with a new offensive coordinator coming in. Obviously you had Ben Johnson there the last, 2.5, 3 years as the offensive coordinator. We saw this kind of essentially like a 50-50 split between Gibbs and Montgomery. Sometimes there's a little bit more Gibbs. Sometimes there's a little bit more Montgomery. But like when it boils down to it, it was essentially a 50-50 split. Is this the year where we see it just go a little bit more towards Gibbs? I'm not saying Montgomery's just going to be nothing and he's hardly going to play. He's always going to have a role. They like him. He fills a role for the team. But if it's not crazy to see a world where David Montgomery falls out of like that RB1, RB2 range, low end. He becomes more of a low end RB2 type of guy because the touchdowns slightly go down just because he's on the field a little bit less. This feels like the year that it could potentially happen because of the offensive coordinator change and because of what we just saw from Jahmyr Gibbs. Like, he's a legitimate, he makes their offense is better when Jahmyr Gibbs literally is the one touching the ball all the time rather than any other run back. In my opinion, it is better with Jahmyr Gibbs as like playing 80% of the snaps. Now, they don't want to do that for an entire season because they don't want to get Gibbs hurt, right? And they know they need him for the playoffs. But I'm just kind of throwing it out there where, like, what if we see, instead of close to a 50-50 split, what if we see a 60-40 split, right? A 65-35 split where Montgomery's still involved, but just that drop, that 10% maybe drop in snaps is going to affect his touchdowns. What if we see a situation where the Lions, their efficiency goes down? They're not as efficient on offense. A lot of times when offensive coordinators do change, it's a little bit of a struggle in the beginning especially when you're with veteran quarterbacks who've been with the same offensive coordinator for multiple years, like Goff and Ben Johnson. When you see that change, there's generally a dip. There's a learning curve, at least for the first few weeks of the season. So all these things kind of running through my head, like, yes, he's a lock to get a touchdown. But to be honest, when he doesn't get a touchdown, he's not very good. So what if we just see the touchdowns go from literally a touchdown a game almost to, 0.7 touchdowns per game, right? 0.6 touchdowns per game. Instead of scoring 12 last year, he gives you 9. Like, that's going to drop him a decent amount. So just kind of throwing it out there with Montgomery. I'm fully acknowledging, like, I don't think he's going to go away. I think there's a very good chance you're kind of getting him at his floor here as the RB22. But just the thought that's kind of been running through my mind of, is it time to maybe cash out on Montgomery? You got 2 really good years out of him if you had him on your team. Is it time to cash out now and be okay with kind of the results of it? On to some wide receivers here. Zay Flowers, to me, is a sell high. Now, I think Zay Flowers, if you put him on a lot of other offenses, like, he is a top 15, top 20 consistently guy. I know he finished as like wide receiver 24 last year. And all these numbers, by the way, are in half PPR. But in terms of his points per game, it's a lot further from what he's actually finishing. Again, 2024, I believe he finished as the wide receiver 24. But you see here in his points per game, and I'm just going to double check this. So in total points, he finishes the wide receiver 24, but in points per game, he was all the way down to the wide receiver 36. That's a huge, huge difference. And that matters. Like, yeah, it matters that he's out there all the time, but he's not necessarily winning you leagues, putting up this crazy performance. He's a wide receiver 3. He's a wide receiver 3 that can, have a big game here and there. But that's just what he is. And so if you have Zay Flowers and that's how you think of him, then that's fine. Then you can keep him. But if you think he's going to get to, giving you top 15 consistent production, for the next couple of years, or maybe even a wide receiver one, then I think you're mistaken, just because that offense is centered around Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. Obviously, you have Mark Andrews there. You have other players like Rashad Bateman. Do they bring in another weapon? I don't know. Like, you're always going to have some other pieces there. Like, I don't know if Zay Flowers is ever going to be just that huge target hog type of guy. And it's unfortunate because, again, like if he's on another team that's a little bit more pass happy, or doesn't have a quarterback that's going to run the ball a bunch like Lamar Jackson, then Zay Flowers is awesome. And obviously, like, he's not going to. There's a good chance he's not on the Ravens forever, but he's probably on the Ravens for the next 3 years. So it's just the thought there of, like, you look at some of the guys around Zay Flowers, ranked around him according to Keep Trade Cut. And like even guys like DK Metcalf, DJ Moore, Terry McLaurin, these are players where, like, I think they're going to outproduce Zay Flowers over the next 2 seasons. I do. I think they're going to outproduce him over the next 2 seasons. And honestly, like, I know it's Dynasty and we think long-term, but we kind of view Dynasty. I mean, damn, we view it week to week a lot of times during the season, but you kind of need to look at it in 2 to 3 windows. And beyond that, you're kind of mistaken, just because the NFL changes way too much. I mean, just look at the Atlanta Falcons. Like, oh, Michael Penix, what? We're not going to see him for 3 years, and we already saw him year 1. Like, everything just changes so much. So again, there's just some guys around Zay Flowers that I think are going to be better than him in terms of production for the next couple of years. I don't know if Zay Flowers is ever going to get into that top 15 type of player. So that's just my thought about Zay Flowers there and potentially selling high on him. Another guy that I kind of feel this way, and again, I don't hate the Lions. I am a Chargers fan, but the Lions, if you know, my father, who's on this channel with us at times, he is a Lions fan, so I root for the Lions. I do. But Jameson Williams kind of feels a little bit like the Zay Flowers type of player, right? But that being said, he had a good season. He had a breakout season. I was telling people last year at this time to go buy Jameson Williams because he was still a talent that I thought deserved to go in the first round. People thought he was going to be the number 1 wide receiver in that draft class, especially if he didn't tear his ACL. And, and he broke out last year. He had 12. He was wide receiver 20 in points per game, which is good startable piece. It's another one of those where we're already heading into year 4 of Jameson Williams. I'm not 100% convinced that the Lions are going to pay him a bunch of money to be, their wide receiver 2. They absolutely could. And he's probably on the Lions for the next 2 years because they do that 5th-year option. But, he's going to want to get paid here soon. You're going to start hearing about that. And what's that going to be like? For a fact, he's not going to be the number 1 target on the team. That's Amon-Ra St. Brown. There's a good chance he's not even the number 2 target, most targeted player. He was last year. He out-targeted Laporta, but it wasn't by much. And I wouldn't be surprised if Laporta, out-targets him next year, for example. And the Lions are also a team where they do a really good job at filling all the holes on their team before the draft. That's what they kind of go out and try and do. Oh, we need defensive backs. We're gonna sign or trade for a bunch of guys. Oh, we need a wide receiver. We're gonna bring a guy in. Whatever. They do a really good job, in my opinion, of really trying to cover all their weaknesses on their roster, so that when you go into the draft, you can literally go best player available. And that's kind of like ideally what you want to do, right? You want to have kind of, okay, we don't have a significant hole in any part of our team. We can literally go out and get the best player that falls to us. What if that's a wide receiver this year? What if one of those top 4 guys, what if Matthew Golden? What if, I don't think Golden or Ted McMillan will fall, but what if Emeka Ibuka or Luther Burden fall? Do they go out and take them? It's just some thoughts running around in my head. And again, like, Jameson Williams is another one of those. If you view him as like a wide receiver 2/3, then you're perfectly fine keeping him. If you view him as like, oh, I have a piece here that could potentially get into, be a wide receiver 1 or a top 15 type of guy, I'm just not sure that's going to happen. Again, and a lot of it goes back to just, Amon-Ra St. Brown on the team. And this is obviously a really good offense, but this is also an offense that's going to run the ball a lot in the red zone, as we see with, Gibbs and Monty, what did we say? Montgomery had 25 touchdowns the last 2 years. Jahmyr Gibbs has 31 touchdowns. So we're talking about 56 touchdowns over the last 2 years between the running backs. So it's just a team that is definitely going to spread the ball around a little bit. And so I don't necessarily see a big top 15 season coming in for JMO unless something happens to like Amon-Ra St. Brown. Last one here is Tucker Kraft. I was a few years back on the if you watched us all the way back then, which thank you if you did, because that's kind of when we were just starting. I was telling people, in Dynasty rookie drafts a couple years ago when Musgrave and Tucker Kraft were drafted, Musgrave round 2, Kraft round 3, and everyone was taking Musgrave like late second, third round, and Tucker Kraft was going undrafted. And I was kind of with the mindset of like, go out and get Tucker Kraft. Like, don't waste your pick on Musgrave because why is he going, in round 2 or 3 and Kraft's not even being drafted when I think there's kind of an equal shot that these guys, they kind of have an equal shot at being the tight end 1 for the Packers. And it turned out that way. Tucker Kraft is the guy. That being said, if you watch this channel, my philosophy on tight ends. My philosophy is literally like, once you get outside of like the top 5-ish guys, they really, really don't matter too much. Unless you play in a heavy tight end premium league, they really, really don't matter that much. I mean, Tucker Kraft right now is the tight end 9 in Keep Trade Cut. You have your top guys, Bowers, McBride. Those guys are legit difference makers. Laporta's still up there. A couple of rookies in Loveland and Warren are up there. Hawkinson, Kittle. Those guys all deserve to be there. Those guys, the rookies we don't know yet, but the other guys I mentioned, those guys are difference makers at the position, in my opinion. But then you get into Kincaid, Kraft, Pitts, Njoku, Likely, Andrews, Otten, Ferguson, and just a lot of guys where it's like, I think Tucker Kraft is going to be a low-end tight end 1 for the next several years. I do. I think that's what he's going to be. I don't think he's ever going to be, the leading target getter for the Packers. And if he is, it's not going to be by much. Packers, they seem like they want to run an offense where they don't have a number 1 option anywhere. Is that right? Is that wrong? I don't know. But you have just a bunch of guys, Christian Watson, Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, Romeo Doubs, Luke Musgrave. Do they try and bring in a wide receiver 1 as well? Again, I think Tucker Kraft will be a low-end tight end 1 for the next several years. And that's not what I'm arguing. I'm not arguing that he's not going to be that. What I'm arguing is I don't know how much of a difference that's going to make versus when you compare, these low-end tight end 1s to tight end 15, 16, 17. There's not a whole lot of difference. I mean, Tucker Kraft last year, he averaged only a point or less more than guys like Pat Freiermuth, Cade Otton, Tyler Higbee. He only averaged 0.6 points more than Tyler Higbee. Evan Ingram, Hunter Henry. He averaged just 1.1 points more than Hunter Henry. Where you obviously want Kraft over those guys, but it's not going to be a huge difference between tight end 9 and tight end 15, 16. It's just not. And so, again, I like Tucker Kraft. I think this is who he is. I think he's a solid player, but I'm looking to down tier because, again, I just think he's at the top of a tier of tight ends that don't really matter that much. So give me Pat Freiermuth and plus, right, for Tucker Kraft, and I will happily take it. Right now, Pat Freiermuth's the tight end 16. Would I be shocked if Pat Freiermuth is just better than Tucker Kraft next year? I wouldn't at all. Give me Pat Freiermuth and whatever, a nice solid piece that you want to throw on top of it, and I'll happily do it. So that's just kind of my thinking with Kraft. Agree, disagree, that's fine. Let me know in the comments what you think. As always, make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you guys all in the next video.